Hey friends, Ari Koinuma here, and today I wanted to tackle one of the most demanding and iconic parts from one of my heroes, King Sex. You Were Born to Be Loved. The ending has this extended section where the band goes into what I define as a group virtuosity section. It's a tightly synchronized riffing that just kind of blows your mind in terms of its complexity and tightness and togetherness that the band creates, and it's a concert highlight. They always play at the end of the set, and everybody looks forward to just hearing that part. And I wanted to figure out what's going on here, so I sat down and figured out, and I'll share with you what I learned. Now, but before I do that, a couple of disclaimers here. One, this is really not a lesson on how to play this song, and if you are interested in that, let me know in the comments, but it wasn't really intended to, it will give you some ideas of what's going on, but it's really not intended to be a lesson in terms of how to play the song. And secondly, it does feel, or it may feel like, if you, let me put it this way, I firmly believe that mystery is part of charm of a song, and I like the song for how complex the ending sounded, and not being able to figure out what's going on. And now that I sat down and figured out what is going on, there is possibly a sense of magician showing you the what's going on behind his tricks kind of thing, or spoiler alert, right? You might lose some of the interest in the song when you figure out what's going on, that sort of thing. So if you are a person who just loves this song and loves the mystery and complexity of the ending and don't really want it explained, consider yourself warned before proceeding, because I will sort of really break it apart and tell you how this part is put together. Alright? Okay, so with those disclaimers out of the way, let's figure out what's going on. So this ending section starts, basically, it's basically a variation on this riff that they sort of played in the bridge part of the section. It goes kind of like this. So that's a cool riff that's in two parts, and then actually the first half of this, well, so when the ending section begins, they play through that once through, and then from there they basically alternate between two variations of that. The first time around, well, okay, let me break it apart this way. So there are two sections, there's the whole descending riff, and then there's the turnaround, right? So it goes. Right, so that's like what I consider the first half, and then there's the turnaround. That part. And in the first section, the main descending riff, there are three chunks to it, right? There's a single note part, and then there's the chord, and it has that pattern repeated 3 times. That's the 1. That's 2. That's the 3. And what they're doing in terms of creating variation is building a stopping point between different parts. So the first variation is simpler. So they go through the whole descending section, but when they land on the D at the bottom, they stop there. So it goes. So notice after the second chord, the C matrix chord, they land on D, and that's where they stop. I count them like basically 1, 2, and then there's a sort of a anticipation or syncopation and the dotted rhythm. Like that. The second variation is the more complex one. It has these built-in pauses in places that you just don't expect, and I have to really think hard and concentrate to pull this off. So it starts out the same, and it's up here, and then this part is different rhythm, and it skips a note, like that, into the and that's where it stops also. And then this note is longer before that, and then before going to the turnaround. And then this turnaround doesn't end on the D open string, it stops on F. Like that. And then basically, so they during the whole ending section, they start with the straightforward riff once, and they go through variation 1, variation 2, variation 1, variation 2, variation 1, variation 2, and then the last one is kind of a variation 1, but it was the guitar jamming, and then they sort of end with the opening riff. Right, like that. So let me see if I can play the whole thing for you, and then I will see if I can pull it off. Alright, so as you saw, I was pretty sloppy there. The timing, the counting, it's just tricky. And when I see them live, I don't see them. Well, see, the thing is, I can see myself pulling this off if I could look at the drummer. But when I see them live, Ty and Doug are just not looking at Jerry at all. They're facing the audience. They're usually smiling, and I don't see their head bobbing or toe tapping or anything like that. Right? They just know this song by heart. They've done it so many times, and that's what I call group virtuosity. I think, there's individual virtuosity, which is really common, and it gets showcased in band settings, people taking leads and stuff like that, and you practice and you develop your individual mastery, individual virtuosity. And in my opinion, I think there's also innate talent being involved with individual capability. It's just that each of us has capacity, and you practice to develop and realize your full capacity. But it's like not everybody can run and work really hard and be able to run as fast as Usain Bolt. Or if somebody asks me, will I ever be as good as Steve Vai if I, practiced 8 hours a day or for 5 years or something? I would say, no, probably not. I just don't see myself possessing his level of capacity. But on the other hand, I feel that group virtuosity can be developed because it's about group cohesion and it's about creativity and how you sort of put the individual pieces together to create a whole that is very impressive and hard to pull off and requires advanced skills and commitment. And that is only limited by your imagination. And King's X really sort of demonstrated that here. When you dissect it, actually there are only two variations. They're going back and forth. So in my mind, it sounded so complex and so unbelievable before analyzing it. And then once I figured out what's going on, I'm like, oh, okay. At least I can understand what's going on. It's no less inspiring though. It's just really hard, and I can't imagine the amount of time they rehearsed to get this thing as tight as they did, and they play it perfectly to this day, 30 years later. So that's really amazing and inspiring. The other thing I would say about this is that there's this unpredictable stops and go in the music, and when the music don't follow perceived pattern, or when there are sort of this kind of arrangement, I would consider it almost like a gotcha or jump scare in a horror movie. It just when these things come and go, the two opposing things happen. One is that in music, we appreciate predictability, and when there's a groove going on, we feel comfort in the familiarity and predictability and reliability of certain rhythmic motifs or structure. And when that gets messed with, it feels a bit uncomfortable in a way, because you can't predict what's happening next. But then also it makes you sort of sit and pay attention. And so this is not a section where audience is gonna just head bang and do the devil sign or go into the mosh pit. This is a moment in the concert when you just stop and stare in awe. And when you're on the creating side, that's something that you can keep in mind, that when you have these unexpected stops and goes in music, it just can really get audience's attention and makes them pay attention to what you're doing. So that's something that we can try incorporating into our own music, right? Right, that's it for today. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.